just got the first copy of my book.
Prior to entry, and be hosted by Legal Immigration Services.
Guys, how are you? It's Brett Miller here from APPLICANT.
Fantastic service, fantastic.
Always recommend me.
Hey guys, how are you? It's Brandon Miller here. I wanted to do a quick video wrap up and tell you some of the things that I discovered at the National Citizenship and Immigration Conference this past week, which took place in Vancouver. So I got a number of really cool updates for you, but there was a number of issues that we discussed, and there was a number of things that went on in this two-day event where lawyers, consultants, and members of the government all come together. So I wanted to share some of those because I think that it's a really good opportunity for you guys to get some insight on what's to come next. So some of these might be interesting with respect to the government updates, and that's what I wanted to focus in on. The presentation that I want to talk about the most is the one that was done with Andre Burrell. He's actually the Director General responsible for the overall operations, i.e. the boss of IRCC, and also Alexandra Hiles, who, if I'm correct, she was the acting Deputy Director of the Domestic Network. So basically, she's responsible for stuff in Canada. And previously, she was in charge of Sub-Saharan Africa, which was truly great because she's got a really good picture of a lot of different things. So, as I'm sure you can appreciate, we're actually getting updates from the proverbial horse's mouth. So they gave a real synopsis of IRCC operations over the past year, and obviously with an emphasis on COVID. It was truly helpful when you actually stand back and listen to some of the impacts of the pandemic and all the different things on the immigration system. IRCC has been had a lot to do in digital environments, and they've actually been doing a pretty good job if you really stand back and you think about it. I feel that there's more efficient system to come, and while having some of the frustrations that I know you guys are having and certainly we're having, I'm feeling pretty good about where things are going. Now, I'm sure that there's going to be people who disagree, especially those who've been waiting patiently in queue, and certainly I share your frustrations. But I'm going to tell you, after hearing some of the monumental issues they've been grappling with, I totally get that there's issues and things are going to take their course. Anyways, look, let's dive in and let me get you some information, as I got some great information to share that I was able to glean from the government meetings with respect to federal skilled workers, overseas applicants, students, and caregivers, along with some explanations of different things like the TRPR program, which was truly enlightening. So let's dive in because the overarching theme was technology. So they emphasized that there's an increasing number of electronic applications and that it really forced the modernization process quite a bit. Technology that was being utilized right now is actually something that's been kind of cobbled together out of necessity, and they've been using pieces from different systems to roll things out pretty quickly as they kind of had to. So imagine that you had to build a whole program and then put it into a portal and then actually get it working while you're struggling with everyone out of the office, COVID restrictions, and obviously trying to deal with the political directives of meeting numbers. Oh, and let's also think about the fact that these guys are also people and they have their personal struggles too. On that note, I was thinking the thing that just popped into my head is the Director General in his presentation, and he visibly telegraphed that the Afghanistan situation landed squarely on his plate, and it was the most difficult thing that he had to deal with in his career. And as I'm sure you can appreciate, he's had a long career. So, and it hasn't been all easy peasy. So let's shift gears. Let's talk about the TR to PR pathway. So we all know the borders have been closed and the immigration department has had to meet their numbers. And this program was born out of necessity and pressure to meet those numbers while taking into account all the people in Canada that were derailed due to the pandemic. So jumping into the TR to PR program, there was some comment and dialogue, but the biggest question was around ARs, or acknowledgement of receipts. So the biggest issue here is that the AOR issuance is not lining up with the time that people applied. And what I mean by that is that there's people who applied later than others, but they were still getting these AORs, or acknowledgement of receipts, quicker. So generally they let us know that this is more of an IT issue and there's a bottleneck where they're transferring the information from one system into another system. And what you may or may not know, there's a government system called GCMS, which is a global case management system, and getting stuff in there has been maybe somewhat challenging. So let's talk about the innovation and keep that stuff in mind. So I love innovation in all different types of areas, and immigration process in the department is no different, and they're thinking along the same lines. There's a lot of innovation and new tools, some of which might be questionable with respect to transparency, but I'll save that for another day. But some are quite positive, and I want to kind of focus on that too. Obviously, IRCC is looking to modernize and move things into a digital platform. But again, there's a lot of challenges on top of that in terms of processing times, maintaining service standards, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And oh yes, the pandemic. It was indicated that the system that was put together they were using an outside contractor, Deloitte, and they completed it very quickly. And it's actually part of a larger change that's taking place within their digital environment at IRCC, which is slotted to take 5 to 7 years. So what we see now is not what's going to happen, and that's basically where things are happening. Also, with respect to paper applications, we know that there's a limitation because they need to scan it and put it into the system. But it was nice to hear that they've hired outside contractors so that these things can go quickly. And I'm thinking, you folks in the spousals and caregivers, hopefully we're going to see some movement on this soon because they are aware of it and they're working to move this stuff quicker. Now, I want to shift gears and I want to touch on another issue, and it's directed to overseas applicants who've been waiting to come here. And if you've been looking at Twitter and all the other stuff, Don't lose hope, guys, as the pandemic has thwarted the EE draws for people overseas, and the government is fully aware of this, and they kept referring to this as uneven processing, okay? When the Federal Skilled Worker Program was brought up, and I know other colleagues and I have been asking questions about this, right? With respect to this program and other overseas programs, there's obviously issues with the border, and this is more tied to places where the pandemic is not going well, all right? So they've had to focus on in Canada. Because think about it, there's the Canadian numbers, and when you've got overseas numbers, you've got levels plans. They're pulling people inside of Canada because they need to keep to those numbers and targets, right? They've been told to meet those and they have to do it. They have to keep it on track. There's a lot of things in there politically, et cetera, that I'm not going to get into. Also, speaking of the levels plan, as I'm sure you can appreciate, with these aggressive numbers, they're looking to get people in the system, in and out of the system as quickly as possible. It's a lot easier to land somebody in Canada as opposed to somebody who's overseas. So this was something that was taken into account, and hence the TRPR program, all right? There were no specifics on what will happen with the FSW program, and as I'm sure you can appreciate, they do not want to announce things publicly until they're done through the proper channels. But they did comment that overseas applicants will not be the same as 2021 in that respect. And reading between the lines on that and the way it was said, I think it's a very positive indication, and we'll see how that truly works. But I truly believe, as do many of my colleagues, that there's a need to keep the FSW program alive and not lose the applicants under this program, as it's certainly been a mainstay in the immigration system for many, 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 many years, okay? So hang in there, guys. All right, students. Now, there were a few things that might be of interest. There was a question about the student extension of December 2021 deadline for students overseas to be able to continue to study and still preserve their ability to get a postgraduate work permit. Okay? Now, any extensions like this come from the minister. And no, I'm not going to bore you or get into things like orders in council or ministerial instructions or all of these other little tools that are out there. But as you may or may not know, we have a new immigration minister, Sean Fraser, who's taken over, and there's lots of things that are going on there. And I'm sure he's just getting settled into the job. With respect to extending those provisions or looking at adopting extensions or new measures, it was confirmed that yes, they are aware of this, and there's a lot of discussions going on right now. And frankly, it was also hinted that there was going to be an announcement later this month, okay? Or in about a month's time. Actually, just as a side note, and not to shamelessly self-promote myself for this channel, you might want to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you can get those updates. All right, kind of back over here now. So let's keep going with this. Update. Okay, so putting all of that aside, let's wrap things up with caregivers. Okay, I've worked a lot with caregivers over the years, and we all know that there's been a pandemic going on, and it certainly showed us the need for care, especially for our vulnerable and younger populations. I'm actually going to save my thoughts on this, as I truly wish that the program would be looked at harder, as the reality on the ground is that the current processing time is long, and it's actually just not meeting the needs. And the pandemic has made this even worse. Imagine there hasn't even been a new caregiver introduced through this program or entered into the country in the last 2 years. So think about that, right? It's a long time. Caregivers were also addressed in the presentation, although briefly, and this goes back to the problems with paper applications being digitized and also with staffing issues for paper applications that have been sent to IRCC, specifically CPC Edmonton, Case Processing Center Edmonton. But I'm going to tell you, stay tuned, folks, as it was readily apparent that they're fully aware of this and they're looking to tackle the issue because there's pressure to do that. I know it's hard for people out there who've been affected to remain positive, but I assure you that we're watching this and we'll certainly keep you updated. And frankly, I'm as skeptical as the most, but I'm pretty positive. I'm going to wrap this up because I want to say a few more things. As I said, I am skeptical as the next person of a pre-packaged government presentation, but I have to say I've been in this industry for a while, and I know that, 10 years ago, we wouldn't have this level of engagement. And a lot of members from the government would come in, they would say, here you go, here's a presentation that doesn't answer any questions. Thank you for raising that. We'll get back to you. And then we'll hear nothing, right? I actually am very grateful of the people that have been coming out over the past few years, the level of engagement. And I actually want to echo a final thought of a colleague of mine, Kim, who was moderating the session and rightly pointed out. We've all thanked our frontline workers who've worked through the pandemic, but there are many people at the immigration department that have worked in the background. And frankly, if you look at this, they've worked tirelessly to keep this immigration system on track and moving as best as they could with massive challenges, right? When you look at the challenges and you step back to think about, really, it's quite remarkable. So as easy as it is to criticize and get impatient, and trust me, I get it, right? I truly do. I think given with what they've had to deal with, they've done a pretty remarkable job. And I, for one, I think we're going to see a lot of changes and improvements that are coming to the system. And while it might be painful now, I can tell you that I'm optimistic about what is coming and what we're seeing. All right? Listen, guys, hang in there. I firmly believe that 2022 is going to be a fantastic immigration year, and you should be setting yourself up for that now. So let's leave it at that. We'll be posting updates as they come along with my commentary, as I like to do. So please feel free to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you can get your information here first. And I hope everyone's staying safe. And again, thank you for all your support, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon. All right, take care, guys, and thanks again.